Well, that will certainly do. A Brooklyn blowout to start the Hornets season, 136-117. So many moments, so many high-flying Brandon Miller alley-oops from LaMelo Ball. Four rookies drafted, 3 of them play, 2 of them start on opening night. Man, we got so much to get into. Let's do it.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome in to Locked On Hornets. I'm Doug Branson. Walker Mail was in the arena tonight covering things for WFNZ. We'll get more of his thoughts on tomorrow's episode. But for now, we are just going to spend about a half hour diving into this 136-117 win for the Charlotte Hornets over the Brooklyn Nets. And man, what a game. What a beautiful game to watch, particularly on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, let's just say this before we really dive into the details. When you compare what we saw tonight to the eye bleed of an offensive game plan that really the Hornets were forced to go into most games with last season because of how many of their offensive weapons they were missing due to injury, just the difference in the crispness of the ball movement, in the actual LaMelo ball movement towards the rim, whether it was his body going towards the rim to finish layups or whether he was throwing the ball sky high to Brandon Miller for alley-oops. Brandon Miller led all Hornets scores with 25 points. It was so good to see him back and healthy and scoring for the Charlotte Hornets and assisting for the Charlotte Hornets. He finished with 7 assists. Miles Bridges picked up right where he left off in preseason, 18 points, 11 rebounds. This one of 2 Hornets double-doubles in this. We'll get to Ryan Kalkbrenner and his rookie debut along with Knueppel. But the big story is that the Hornets go into a renovated Spectrum Center full of a lot of Charlotte Hornets fans. Brooklyn they don't travel like the New York Knicks do. And at the end of that game, they got a standing ovation from the crowd because of the energy, because of the effort, because of the intensity that they played with. And it was rooted in Charles Lee's leadership. It was rooted in the improvements that LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller made to their bodies, their minds, their games, and the additions that the front office made in Collin Sexton to this team. And what he was able to do, straight line driving, strip stealing, Moussa Diabaté, 13 points, 9 rebounds in this game, 3 of 4 from the line, the touch, the feel of Moussa, the fabric of the Charlotte Hornets. Like it was incredible to watch. And I love the fans for giving them a standing ovation. It almost, look, you're never, the Charlotte Hornets, unless they get to an Eastern Conference Finals, unless they, get to an NBA Finals, they're never going to be able to recreate the magic that was 90s Hornets, Charlotte Coliseum, standing room only kind of thing where everybody was excited because they only had one professional team. But to get a standing ovation and to have Spectrum Center rocking like it did, that had to make the players feel good, that had to make Charles Lee feel good, but particularly an ownership group in Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnall. Yeah, that's right. After that win, I will name each of them individually. We'll save Schlotkin for another day. But Gabe Plotkin, Rick Schnall, and Jeff Peterson had to make them happy, had to make them proud that, hey, we invested something in this team, and look, the city is responding. You put the game on local television, I bet more people will respond. I bet more people will start to wake up. If they continue to win like this, can they continue to win like this? Maybe that's what we'll talk about a little bit later in the show because, you were playing the Brooklyn Nets, a team that decided this offseason, we were too good last season. We've got to get worse. We've got to make Jordy Fernandez, great coach, too great. They probably hired a coach in Jordy like 2 or 3 years too early. And so they said, Jordy, we got to make your job a lot harder. And they did. And the Hornets took advantage of it. 136 points, by the way. if you watch the game and watch the call, Eric Collins informed you that 136 mark is a Hornets franchise record that dates back to 1990, all the way back before the Hornets were even good. They scored 130 points in 1990, and so that breaks that franchise record in a debut night, not overall, but in a opener, 136. That's the record, and in fact, 9 of the 10 Charlotte Hornets that stepped onto the floor scored in double figures. So you had Miles with 18, you had Brandon with 25, LaMelo with 20. There's your big three. Then the bench and the auxiliary players behind them, Moussa, 13 points, 9 rebounds. Trey Mann, 12 points. Collin Sexton, 15 points. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 10 points. Tijan Salon, 10 points. Maybe we get to a little bit of Tijan talk towards the back half of this show, although I'll just say right now, there's so much to talk about from this game that something is going to hit the cutting room floor, and that's where Walker will come in tomorrow with me, and we'll pick up the pieces and try to get to some of the other storylines in this game. But I'm going to hit the high-level stuff here. Knueppel, 11 points, 5 rebounds, and the only player that didn't score in double figures was Sion James, who was the surprise, I think, rotation player in this game. The 10th man, getting 16 minutes in this game, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And I'm fine with the 2 points because, I didn't expect him to be in the rotation at all relative to how much he played in the preseason. But then he was doing a lot of dirty work as well. But the fact that they all scored in double figures, yes, like they were shooting well. I think as a team from 3, they finished 47% from 3, 17 of 36. But let's talk about that 36 number, right? There were games that they opened the season with last season where they were chucking. I mean, they were throwing up 40, 45. And in the preseason, we saw them sometimes get to 50. Maybe I was having a fever dream, but I feel like there was a 63-point attempt game at one point. I mean, they were putting up at the beginning of last season. It slowed down as the season went on, and you lost more players that could actually shoot threes. But they were putting up like Boston Celtics level shot attempts, but they didn't have the shooters. But in this one, I mean, they were just much more judicious with the 3-point shot, and they were moving the basketball. And I think they saw an opportunity to cut inside on a young, inexperienced, I mean, even your veterans on that team, on the Brooklyn team, you've got Michael Porter Jr., and you've got Cam Thomas. Well, neither of those players are going to be a threat to stay in front or stop you at the rim. Now, they had some bigs, but those bigs were, I think, more effective on the offensive end than they were on the defensive end. And the Hornets were able to really get to the rim at will. And I saw, this was an interesting stat too. So restricted area frequency for the Charlotte Hornets, 43.3%. 3-point frequency, 40. So they were getting to the rim more than they were shooting 3-point shots. And let me just tell you, if you're just tuning in now, maybe you were just like, too many injuries last season, I'm done. But honestly, I mean, you could look at the past couple of seasons, and this was a team that liked to shoot. Whether they could do it or not, they liked to shoot. And they didn't like to drive a lot. And not only getting to the rim, but then once they were there, they were largely ineffective. But not in this game. I mean, they got to the rim, and again, so much of that is Collin Sexton. I mean, his ability to go coast to coast. He caught the Nets sleeping on so many possessions, but it was just their willingness to push the pace nonstop. LaMelo Ball was part of it. That's a whole team effort. Like LaMelo, we're going to remember the LaMelo highlight plays, right? The 3 alley-oops that he threw to Brandon Miller, 2 of those in transition, 1 of those in half court. We're going to remember those. We're going to remember Moussa. The Moose going as loose as he possibly could go when he gets the defensive, I think it was a steal, or maybe it was a block. It was a block, and he gathers it, and he's got Brandon Miller way out in front. Like all he's got to, he just tap it to Brandon. Brandon will finish that thing. And I thought Brandon thought he was getting it too, but then he saw that look. Moose had that look in his eye. You know what I'm saying? Moose had the look in his eye, and he had clean air, and he was like, "No, I got the block. I'm getting the bucket here," and it was amazing. So everybody was pushing the pace. 136 to 117, the final score. Hornets' 5th straight opening night victory. That's crazy. That is insane. All right, stay with us. We're going to talk more. I'm going to talk more. I'm going to talk until I can't talk anymore about this amazing start to the season and what it means. I think it means there's one thing in particular that all of this whole thing means. There's a lot of things that this victory doesn't mean, by the way. And I want to talk about that at the end of the show. Like, what does this not mean? But I'll tell you one thing it does mean coming up next on Locked On Hornets.
Bees everywhere!
Also, the rookies. We got to talk the rookies too. I cannot forget about the rookies. 2 of them start. Knueppel, Ryan Kalkbrenner, and then Sion James play as well. I'll talk about them coming up here on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode of Locked On Hornets is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks has been helping this show out for a long time, so let's help them out. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. And, if you ever hear me on this show, I like to be right. So, and if it gets me paid, even better. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such fun. It's such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to your football action. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards, or you can go Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and bang, you are in the game. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups, and all it takes is one click. And look, if there's one thing I like more than being right, it's being right and it being easy, right? When I can just shortcut click and I'm right, I love it. And they also have the injury reboot feature. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. Today's episode is also brought to you by Bilt. Look, nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Bilt comes in. Bilt is, they're changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay rent through Bilt, you can earn flexible points that get redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much, much more. But Bilt isn't just about rent, it's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love Bilt. It's making rent work for you, and I love anything that makes something that you might not necessarily like to do. It makes it work for you. I think that's a big deal. Bilt has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning those points today around your neighborhood by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA, and make sure to use that link so that they know that we sent you, which helps out our show. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Back here on a Locked On Hornets, man, the bench bees were incredible in this one. Moussa's energy on the boards, on the block, outstanding. He flashed some touch in the paint. I thought, look, if you look at Nick Claxton and if you look at Day'Ron Sharpe, both of those guys were able to get something on Moussa because they're bigger than Moussa. Height-wise, they may be pretty close, but like when you see them, and we all know if you've been paying attention to the Hornets, it's whose height it isn't anyway. The heights don't matter, and I'm sure that's not just the Hornets. That's probably across the league, right? So what you see on ESPN or NBA.com, who knows? But I know what I saw with my peepers, and my peepers said Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe bigger than Moussa Diabaté. By the way, the Brooklyn Nets knew that as well, and when Moussa was on the floor, they were trying to attack him on the defensive end of the floor. Moussa can use that to his advantage sometimes and get some strips. If they're being a little too patient. But a lot of times you can attack him quick and body him up, move him off his spot, and get closer to the rim than you could with maybe Ryan Kalkbrenner. Because, look, Kalkbrenner used his size to his advantage. Moussa Diabaté couldn't. But at the same time, and I've been on this tip for a long time, right? Moussa, not really an NBA center in my mind, but the Hornets are forced to use him as one. At the same time, in this game, he was able to counter that disadvantage, more than counter it, because counter means like you just same it. I don't think he even did that. I think he went above and beyond that and was a positive on this game overall because of the way that he was just fueling the Hornets energy-wise, but also the contributions that he was constantly making when he was on the floor. It's why Charles Lee called him a winning player. He's a winning player when he's out there. You may be at a disadvantage in certain ways, but you are at an overall advantage when Moose is on the floor. I thought it was the right call not to start him in this game, and that was my prediction when we did Rotation Station. I thought I was wrong on the Sexton thing. They end up going with Knueppel instead of Sexton. But I think that's more about they like Sexton off the bench, and then you can mix and match him with LaMelo. And I thought first of all, they won the LaMelo Sexton minutes, but it was a net rating of 4. They won it by 1 point, so it wasn't like an overwhelming victory. But the fact that you even won those minutes at all, because they're coming in the middle of the game, they're mixed lineups, that's a win for the Hornets if they can continue to do that. But look, the bench bees were great. They lifted. Now, the big turn in this game was in the end of the second quarter. It was like a 21-8 run to end the last 5 minutes of the second quarter. Look, that was led by LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, the guys that were supposed to do it, did it, and moved the lead up. But the bench bees kept the game close through the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, and they maintained the lead in those mixed lineups in the back half of the third quarter. And then I thought Tijan Salon really, more like Tijan Solong to the Brooklyn Nets, like TJ Dagger. I mean, he was crazy in the fourth quarter after being a little bit quiet through most of this game. But yeah, the bench bees coming up huge. Trey Mann gets into double figures, and I thought a little bit of a quiet game for him, but 6 assists. That's the thing about Trey Mann is I think it's quiet because we're looking at him in the wrong places. We're looking at Trey Mann and going, where's Trey I from last season where he was dipsy doodling and not, he did have one sick crossover, right when he checked in. The first time he checked in, he absolutely broke a dude's ankles. I think it was Mann. It wasn't man-on-man crime because that didn't happen until later. I don't know. I can't remember exactly who he crossed up. But, boy, he devastated someone right when he entered the game. But he's got a new role this season. We got to start looking at him differently. We got to start looking at his catch-and-shoot numbers, and we have to start looking at his playmaking numbers. And, again, I thought he picked up right where he left off in the preseason, just like Miles Bridges did, because he gets 6 assists. And before that hip injury, he was absolutely dishing. And only 2 turnovers in this one. Turnovers a problem overall for the Charlotte Hornets, but he only commits 2. And so, 6 assists, 2 turnovers. I'm taking that from Trey Mann off the bench. A big part of the reason why the Hornets were sharing the basketball, moving the basketball effectively. And look, you can critique how many guards the Hornets ended up carrying on this roster, and you can look at that and say, they had to sacrifice at the center position to do that. But man, I mean, if it's going to result in this kind of effective offense moving forward, that might not be a bad decision. All right, I teased it in the first segment. What is the one thing that I took away from this game? It's the one thing that I previewed coming into this game, and I want to see them continue doing as we move through the first 5 to 10 games where they have a little bit of softness in their schedule. They took this game seriously, and they wanted to kill. They were aggressive. They didn't look at the Brooklyn Nets fumbling and look at the fact that they were starting a rookie point guard and go, okay, they obviously they want to get worse. We'll take it easy. No one took it easy in this game, and they kept at it. In the fourth quarter, the Nets made a little mini run, but that's a moment in the game. Like when they started that mini run, that's a moment in the game that last season's Hornets, even when they were somewhat healthy, would have started to give away and would have made that into a game. This version of the Hornets, I think, it's one game, but they look fundamentally different. The energy seems fundamentally different. There is a lot to be excited about off this game because look, sometimes these games can be big mirages. You can look at it and go, wow, they were 55%. They weren't, but they could have been like 55% from three on 45 attempts. And you discard all the other stuff and say, wow, that's great. And it's like, no, they just had a hot shooting night. And then when they get up against a defense where they can't have a hot shooting night, they're not going to be able to sustain anywhere near this level of production. But coming up on Locked On Hornets, let's keep this conversation going. What can we not take away from this game, right? I think that I said it wasn't a giant mirage, but this is, that Nets team is not going to be indicative of what the Hornets face, even in the rest of the softness of their schedule. I mean, next up is Philadelphia. They got to go up against, Joel Embiid, VJ Edgecombe. Philly's got some injuries, but I mean, that's still a talented ball club. So what does this game not mean? Let's get to that coming up on Locked On Hornets. Today's episode is brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything, and we've heard them all before. It's just stress, I'm a little tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, so there's no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, it's simple, and it's private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to those moments that matter most. Visit Rougiette.com/LockedOnNBA. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Final segment here on Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much for listening to us, watching us every day on YouTube, and for checking out everyhornetsboxscore.com. My write-up is going to be going up very shortly, and by the time you listen to this, it will probably already be up. So go check that out for more of my sort of in-depth statty thoughts that may not make it on this show. Okay, so what can we not take away from this game? Because look, that Brooklyn Nets team, that's a disaster. That they are, I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch the Wizards tonight, but I just can't imagine that there's going to be a team worse than the Brooklyn Nets this season. Maybe the Utah Jazz, but that Brooklyn Nets team, they had a goal to get worse, and boy, did they did it. Salute to the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, that is, I don't know why you want to do that after the Dallas Mavericks got the number 1 overall selection, but more power to you. If that's the lesson that you took away, that hey, let's get worse, okay, that's fine. But yeah, that was the Hornets. Again, they took care of business in a very particular way, and I think you are more than allowed, and I certainly am excited about what I watched that team do tonight. But there will be trials and tribulations ahead for this team. And you look at some of the things like the turnovers that they had in this game, the fouls that they gave up, particularly in the second quarter. There were 9 fouls by the Charlotte Hornets. I'll get the total foul number, but it was just way too many. Like Brooklyn, thankfully, I don't think they did particularly well in terms of making their free throws. So free throws on the night, 73.5%, 25 of 34, but 34 attempts from the free throw line. You give that up to a team that can. Well, there's, if they, even if they make 7 more of those, okay, suddenly they could have turned it into a game at different points in this game. They made their fair share of mistakes too. I mean, both of these teams had 17 turnovers apiece. The Hornets were able to turn more of those into slightly more points. But again, 17 turnovers and the Nets only turned that into 12 points. That's not good enough. Yeah, you've got to take care of the turnovers. You've got to take care of some of the foul issues. I know Charles Lee sees it. He mentioned it in one of his break interviews during the game that the fouls were an issue. And so they've got to clean that up. And I think there's going to be somewhere between fully cleaning that up and, hey, I'm playing 3 rookies, right? Kalkbrenner had 4 turnovers. Knueppel, I don't know how many turnovers he had, but I mean, there were some, he was one of the lower game score players in this game. So, and there was just a little bit of like hitch in all of the rookies in terms of where do I go? What do I do? How aggressive am I here? Shoot, pass, all those decisions that you have to very quickly process in the NBA. It's just going to take time for them to get up to speed and good. When you draft players, high IQ players like Knueppel, and you draft older rookies like Kalkbrenner, it is good that you can start them and still win a basketball game. That's not a given. I think this is certainly the first time the Hornets have started 2 rookies, and I think it's the first time a team has started 2 rookies to begin a season and won a game, according to Hornets PR. So, okay, anytime you can start 2 rookies and win a game, it's great. To do it in an opener, I think is a reflection of like, hey, we scouted these guys. We knew they were ready for the moment. Not only we scouted them when we drafted them, but Charles Lee was scouting them the whole time in training camp and knew that they were ready for the moment. Okay? To me, had Kalkbrenner and Knueppel completely pooped the bed, and they didn't. Like, they looked like rookies at times, and they looked like good NBA, solid NBA contributors at times. Neither of them look like superstars. That's fine for now. When you're talking about Knueppel, like eventually you'd like to see him 4th overall pick. You'd like to see him at some point get to a star level, but opening night, his first game ever, that's fine. But if they had completely pooped the bed, to me, that's an indictment on Charles Lee for putting them out there before they were ready and not having that gauge on like, are they going to completely ruin my night? They didn't do that at all. Kalkbrenner made some serious contributions in terms of his ability to protect the rim. I mentioned 5 turnovers, but also he contributed 2 blocks in this game. No steals, but I feel like he disrupted more than 2 blocks. But the 4 turnovers, the 4 fouls from Kalkbrenner too, like he's probably, if he continues to start, we'll see what they do with that position. We'll see if Mason Plumlee ever gets some action. But, I tell you, Mason Plumlee probably will when Ryan Kalkbrenner inevitably ends up with like 3 fouls in the first quarter, because he's going to go up against a center if he starts. He's going to go up against a veteran center who just, gives him the business. And so he'll have 3 fouls, and then you'll see some Mason Plumlee. You'll see more Moussa Diabaté. On and on it goes. And the Hornets might lose a game because of it. And that's just how it's going to be when your center position is what it is and when you're leaning on 3 of your 4 rookies. Interesting that Sion James got the minutes. I think, again, that's a reflection of Cam Thomas, Michael Porter. If anything, Brooklyn does have a few offensive weapons. So if you're picking between Leah McNeely, you have to start Kalkbrenner, or you have to play Kalkbrenner, right? He's second rounder, but you gotta. And because of the center position, Knueppel's going to play. So then it's McNeely and Sion James. So he just goes defense here with Sion. And particularly on-ball defense, which is kind of what you need against Brooklyn, because you don't want Cam Thomas to heat up. You don't want Michael Porter Jr. to get it going. And I thought Sion James did some really good things in terms of his on-ball defense, disrupting things, and he gets in the boards as well. I'll bring this up with Walker tomorrow, but one final just little stat box score nugget for you before we get out of here, because I've been talking about it basically all preseason long. Brandon Miller, 25 points, 7 assists. Great game. Salute. Loved every part of that game except 0 rebounds, like 0. Yeah, like 1. You could get just 1 rebound. So to me, this is kind of about 2 things. One, that Miles Bridges is just, because look, LaMelo Ball only had 2 rebounds. I just think I think that Charles Lee has said, like, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, it's okay. Like, if you don't get a ton of rebounds, it's fine. Everybody needs to be crashing. And there were a couple times where I saw Brandon Miller leak out. So again, this could be a schematic thing. Also, I do think the other thing is, though, I think it's a strength thing. Like, Brandon Miller still needs to get bigger. And I wonder how much of a setback the wrist injury was, and just in terms of building the upper body, like what he was able to do. I mean, if you need your wrist to do certain actions that build up your upper body, right? So I wonder how much of that factored in. And so throughout this season, maybe into next season, because look, Paul George, his idol is a good to great rebounder. And he's a big dude who can get in there and bump and do the things that you got to do to get the tough rebounds. So just something to keep an eye on. I just thought it was funny to put up the goose egg because I have been talking about him, putting up 1, 2, and then it's like, oh, well, okay, now I will take 1, 2. I'll take 1, 2 over 0. But on a night where he scores 25 and has 7 assists and was high flying, I mean, I think LaMelo Ball could throw the basketball straight up into the air 50 feet. And Brandon Miller would somehow, MJ Space Jam style, find a way to guide it into the basket. Like it was a video game. It was incredible. There was no the highlight of the game because there were 3 of them. Incredible. Can't get the big dub hat. It was a great win, but it's against the Brooklyn Nets. If they do that against Philly, you see it back there, don't you? You probably have been wondering if I was going to put it on. I want to save it. We gotta keep it. We got to keep the magic of the big dub hat and use it responsibly. And I want to see the Hornets be more responsible with their turnovers and with their fouling and get a big win against Philly on Saturday. So they get 2 days off. They might even get a practice day in there to kind of look at the film, run through some stuff, maybe get ready for this game on Saturday. And it's the start of a 3-game road trip. Walker and I will be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening, for watching, for supporting this show. Head over to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Hornets and text me your thoughts on this game. Who was the player of the game? You got a lot to choose from. Miles, Miller, Ball. Maybe it's one of the rookies. Let me know on subtext, joinsubtext.com/@Locked On or /Locked On Hornets. And I'll share those with Walker on tomorrow's show. Until then, go Hornets, go America, let's swarm Charlotte. Go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball if you're a fantasy basketball player. Go check out my friends at Locked On NBA, 2 shows a day. They're covering the entirety of the NBA. Check out my show, Yahoo Sports Daily. I'm a producer on that show. We're doing it every day too, talking about all sports. We'll be talking about probably Wembanyama, something Cavs, Knicks on the NBA tomorrow. So check that out. And until next time, man, just savor it. And let's just keep, the hope is the sickness. We're all sickos. We just want this to work out so badly, but I will never tell anyone to let the hope go because that's all we got. We're Hornets fans, baby. Let's do it. We'll see you next time.